This show is listener supported. You can join us and help our show grow to support more adoptees by going to adopteeson.com/partner. You're listening to Adoptees On, the podcast where adoptees discuss the adoption experience. I'm your host, Haley Radke, and this is a special episode in our Healing series where I interview therapists who are also adoptees themselves so they know from personal experience what it feels like to be an adoptee. Today is part 2 of my conversation with Pam Cordano on hidden dignity. Let's listen in. I'm so pleased to welcome back to Adoptees On, Pam Cordano. Hi, Pam.
Hi, Haley.
Oh my word. I'm just so excited to talk to you again. And last week you were talking to us all about grievances and some really foundational principles I think a lot of adoptees need to hear. And we're talking about things that are found in your book, 10 Foundations for a Meaningful Life, No Matter What's Happened, to Viktor Frankl with Love. And I want to continue that conversation. I think it's so important, and just, I don't know how many times I can say valuable in the same breath, but truly you're sharing some things with us that I think like everybody needs to hear, adopted or not, but specifically to adoptees. Yeah. Thank you. Thanks for writing this book. It's so good. I gushed last time, so I'll try and hold back today.
And thank you for reading the book. It means a lot to me, really.
I don't know if you saw, I'm going to show her. I have these like beautiful book darts that my friend Carrie gave me. So there's like all these places I've marked up.
That's funny.
Because I don't like to write in books, but these precious book darts I did use on your book. So that is like priceless. All right. You have this really interesting story about a horse moment.
Yeah.
Should we start there?
Yeah, I love that story. My friend Cynthia and I went to a silent meditation retreat in north of San Francisco. There's this place called Spirit Rock, and I don't really meditate, and I'm not Buddhist, but I went on this thing. I thought, what would happen if I were just silent for an entire week? I didn't know what would happen. I thought it might really be nice for me, or it might be hell. So I was curious, a little frightened. But anyway, we get there, and I was excited also because my job involves so much listening, mostly listening, but some talking. And I was excited to just be quiet and not have to listen to anything except nature, birds and quietness. So we get there, and I was really upset to find out that this was not a silent meditation retreat the way I expected. It was a meta retreat, which means we had to say a meta practice, which is like, if I said it to you, Haley, I would say, there are different versions, but may you be happy, may you be healthy and strong in your body, may you be safe and protected, may you have ease. And for the course of an entire week, we're going to be doing that for hours and hours, dawn to dusk, or actually till like 9 p.m. with easy people all the way to difficult people. And I was just really annoyed I had to work. I was going to have to work and not just sit there and relax. So
did you have an instinct to fake it? My first thought is like, they're not going to know. They're not going to know what I'm thinking about.
I could have done that. I'm sure I did some of the time. Yeah. But so day 2, we were supposed to do a walking meditation, which is just going back and forth like across like 10 feet, and then very, very slowly. And I didn't want to do that. So I did break the rule, and I walked way down to the edge of the property where I found a horse. And it was a whole day that I'd been eating really healthy food and been silent. So I thought the horse would be really drawn to me, like, equine therapy, where you can tell how you're doing by what the horse is doing. And so I kind of clicked to get the horse over, and he came right over, and I was really happy. And I felt like, it was sort of a spiritual moment. And clearly that had something to do with how clear I was getting in my heart and all this. Well, I went back the next day and called him over, and he didn't come. And he was just in the middle of his pen eating his food. And I was so mad at him. I was offended. I was hurt. I was emotional. I was probably going through sugar detox because all the food was really healthy. But I took it personally, that he wouldn't come to me. And I felt rejected by the horse. And so part of me was really in it, triggered by the horse. And part of me was just rolling my eyes at myself and how ridiculous I was being, and just watching myself react and knowing that it was whatever, just my own BS. So because I had nothing else to do, I gave a lot of thought to how I was feeling about this horse's, quote, rejection of me. And I started realizing over the next 2 or 3 days where he kept rejecting me again, that I wasn't really being loving toward the horse. I wanted what I wanted. I wanted his attention. I wanted his compliance, his obedience to me. I wanted to be the center of his life. I wanted to be more important than his food. And I think in some ways silent meditation retreats are like this. We don't think in our normal, things get very exaggerated because we're in our own heads, and there's just nothing else to, people react about crazy things. I'm not as crazy as I might sound right now by the story, but yeah. So I go and I sit on the cushion, and I'm imagining this horse, and I'm doing the meditation with the horse. So I'm thinking, may you be happy. And I felt like, I guess so. May you be healthy and strong in your body. Yes, of course. May you be safe and protected. Yes, of course. May you have ease. I guess so, And I was just watching myself struggle with it. And as I practiced that over and over and over, eventually I did start to feel those things. I did want the horse to be happy. I did want the horse to have ease. And it kind of cleared it up. So as the week went on, I made going to see this horse twice a day like a part of my practice. And it had something to do with, it was like it was a symbol of what I do with other people in my life and with grievances from my life. And so I started trying to, from that place of getting more clear about loving the horse and wanting the horse, truly wanting the horse happy and to have ease and all the other things, I started walking toward the horse, wanting to just be present for whatever the horse was doing without any attachment to what the horse did or didn't do with me. And so I became horse-centered instead of Pam-centered. And it felt really good. Suddenly it felt like I was really, truly loving the horse and not just wanting from the horse in a self-centered kind of way. And then that led to me thinking about my kids and my husband and friends. And it gets very, with these meditation retreats, it gets very subtle, but clear that it takes a lot to just love a person and to be willing to see them and what they're doing or not doing as valid in its own right and not about me. So this goes back to our discussion last week or last recording where we talked about the idea that grievances require us to put ourselves in the center of a situation. So here was me taking myself out of the center and really putting the horse back in the center, because the horse's life is the horse's life. And I felt better. So I mean, that's not to say the whole week was like that, because I was also I was on the cushion doing this metta with my biological family, who I'm estranged from. I was doing it with my adoptive parents, who they've died and we didn't have a good relationship. And I was doing it with hard people too, political figures, all kinds of people.
Well, even when you start talking about it in the book, you talk about doing it with your daughter's dog.
He was my first one.
Like this was the easy. And I thought, wow, okay. I mean, it's so true though, that it's easier to put an animal in that place as a first, because no matter what person you're interacting with, there's always like a little something.
Mm-hmm. That's right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
How did you feel at the end of that week? 5 days feels like such a long time to be doing
7
that.
Days.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah, 7 full days.
7 full days of doing this over and over and over and over with all kinds of different people.
I felt really good. Because the thing was, there wasn't a lot of input. I mean, I would see birds. I would see people out of the corner of my eye. We weren't really supposed to pay attention to each other. So because I wasn't having interactions that might have typically set off my own grievances or triggers, it was like I had a break from all of that. And really the worst problem I had of things that were there was me with this horse. That was the hardest. That was my hardest relationship that week, was with the horse. And it was hard. It was hard for a couple of days in a very exaggerated kind of way.
But even as you're just going through this world, right, you're always interacting people, and there's always little things that come up here and there that you're like, oh, really? That's what you're choosing to say? Like, there's all these little things, little tiny grievances we collect along the way.
Yeah, but luckily, we're all kind of in our own worlds, and
right.
It was
the horse is the only one to give you
grief.
Oh, I was going to say it, and then I was like, oh, this is bad. I'm glad you said it. Okay. Last time we talked, you mentioned to me that you don't really like the word forgiveness. Mm-hmm. Can you talk more about that?
Yeah. I grew up in a non-religious family, so I didn't understand forgiveness from a religious or spiritual point of view. And every time I heard it, it just sounded like the cherry on top, like forgiveness, as if we're supposed to know how to do that. It felt like bypassing, spiritual bypassing, and grievances they're full body experiences. So we can think we want to, quote, forgive somebody, but first of all, why? We would need a reason why to forgive somebody. And our bodies are sometimes they take longer to come along for the ride. I could think to myself, oh, I just want to let that go. But yet my body could still react in a patterned way of threat and of anger and grievance. So I just don't understand the word forgive as a verb, because it feels like it's just the top, like the head, but it's not the whole system. I think sometimes I think of forgiveness sometimes as more of forgiveness is more of a consequence, like meaning, okay, if I reconnect with my own sense of my dignity, if I get the things I need from other places, if I maybe unwrap some of my grievance stories, then eventually forgiveness might happen, but it's just this more of a consequence to these other efforts. I don't know if that's true, but that's sort of how I think of it.
So when you are saying this metta prayer or mantra, or you're kind of releasing things, right, over time about someone, how does that contrast for you with forgiveness? Is that linked in some way? Mm-hmm. I always picture, I do come from a religious background. And so a lot of times people will talk about like, oh, you're forgiving someone, you're taking them off your hook and you're putting them on God's. And there's a real sense of like, there's going to be justice at some point, but I'm not going to be the one to like give it to them.
And that's why I can let go of it, because someone's going to do it, right?
Someone's going to get them in the end. Yeah, which doesn't necessarily have a nice connotation to it either. I'd love to hear your thoughts on that, though.
I think the value for me wasn't in feeling everything I was saying. Like when I would put my biological family in my mind, it was, I really didn't want them to have any kind of danger or illness. Those were the easier ones for me. I could pretty much across the board not want people to be sick or in danger or unsafe. But it was more the happy and ease, the first one and the fourth one, may you be happy, may you have ease, that I would struggle with. Because what does it mean if my biological family is happy and has ease with me not in the picture? What does that mean? And, my old way of thinking would be, what does that mean about me? And I could even start doing that right now. It's not that I'm over that. It's like, if they're happy and they have ease, maybe I'm just so inconsequential and it hurts, So it wasn't that I was saying these things to pretend I felt that way. It was more like I would wish it and then I would see what happened. And you're right. It was a process. Like I would have have body tension. I would say, F that, in my head afterwards. I would have these phrases I would say after in my own mind. But with the repetitive aspect of all this, it would just started to ease a little bit. And the weird thing was I started to feel more free rather than like I was just in an even more unfair situation. Because that had always been my thought before, was if I give up my grievances, I'm really ripping myself off. So the opposite happened.
Did you keep up this practice after your 7-day retreat? Like if you had somebody that you're like, oh, I'm collecting some things against this person, maybe I need to do this a little bit.
Only I probably did it more for maybe the next 2 or 3 weeks, but then I stopped. But now when I would do it would be if I were really suffering in a grievance, like if it was the kind of thing where it was keeping me up at night, like being so mad at somebody or so feeling so hateful towards somebody, I would do it to save myself. That's why I would do it. I would do it to remind myself, I was going to say who I am. And I feel that way because who I am is I want to be better to myself than that. I don't want my night eaten up by an experience of hatred that's alive in my brain and in my body. And I don't want to go through that. I don't want it.
What's that saying? There's like this saying, it's about unforgiveness, right? It's about like you're drinking poison and hoping the other guy dies.
Right. Yeah.
It's not that exactly, but it's, along those lines. So I kind of feel like that's what you're saying there. It's for you.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Because that, like we talked about last conversation, the link for me, and it was a link I had to try on, observe, play with over time, that the grievances were hurting me more than they could possibly be hurting anybody else on the planet. And I didn't want it anymore.
Well, I don't know. This is going to feel broad because there's so many things you talk about in the book about different practices that you've done, different things you've learned. And, this is like a whole, it's great. Like there's so many valuable practices and examples in here. Can you talk about that in, I guess, maybe more a broad way of how you have taken this concrete base of grievances about adoption that we talked about last week and added these practices in, over time and in order to find that sense of freedom and actually enjoy your life and not have just this cement block on you?
Well, what comes to mind when you ask that question is just, it's almost like I want to keep saying this because I don't imagine that anybody would believe me, although I know who I'm talking to, and I'm talking to you and people who are adopted or care about adoption and the impact of adoption. So probably the people listening to this care more than almost anybody. But the thing that really comes to mind is I really did not want to be alive. And I never attempted suicide, but you don't have to. Not attempting suicide doesn't mean you want to be here. So as soon as things would go wrong, I was on such a slippery slope of falling into a very overwhelming, tight trap that I couldn't easily get out of. And also I've had a lot of addiction, and I had such a desperation to find a way to stay here. Like if I was going to stay here, I had to find a way. So I had this therapist in college. I write about that in one of the chapters. And I saw her for 11 years. And she came to my 40th birthday party. And she wrote me a card. And she said, I start to cry if I say this. She said, has anybody worked so hard? She said, has anybody worked so hard? And I felt so seen by that because I've worked really hard. But the point is, it's less about my life feels so much better now. It does. And I believe in the things I'm teaching in the book. I believe in them. I believe they work. But the thing that I was really dreading and avoiding by doing such hard work in so many different ways was I didn't really want to die, I guess. And not just die by suicide, but die by just never finding a way to be here comfortably, and kind of the agony of that, like the purgatory, the agony of that. So that's what's behind all this effort, and still is. I mean, I still have grievances, you know. I could probably name 5 off the top of my head.
Do you need to find a pasture somewhere and hang out with the horse for a bit?
So, and I feel like it's a relief to name that, because I think so many of us live with that underneath somewhere. And clearly, I mean, the statistics tell the truth about how hard it is for us. And I do think it's a miracle for so many of us with our histories and with bonding trouble that we're here at all. Really, it's a miracle. And like, we all should have the superhero logos on us. And
well, I think it comes back to something that we talked about last week again, and just saying that expressing these feelings, and there's that deeper meaning below, like, okay, we actually are valuable, even though we feel like we're just, thrown away, rejected, unworthy, all the words. We know all that language.
Mm-hmm. That's right. That's right.
So discovering that you're meaningful, and like, what does the life look like then?
Something I also realized, along with like the sort of the aha moment for me of, well, no wonder we're mad, because we actually deep down believe we're worth something and that we didn't deserve this. Like, that's the basis of it all. It's this hidden dignity that we have. The other thing I realized is that a meaningful life is available to all of us. Like, a meaningful life isn't just for the people who had intact lives and minimal trauma. It's for us too. So how do we get there? And how do we tap into that so that we're not just feeding our minds and our hearts with the grievances, but we're also, again, subversively and powerfully taking what's our birthright, which is life. If I'm going to be here, I want as much as I can have.
Can I read a short paragraph from your book?
Yeah.
Okay. So here's a paragraph from one of your chapters. I think this is chapter 9. And you've already shared with us before that your adoptive parents have passed away, but you didn't have a very good relationship with them, and you were estranged from your biological family. Mm-hmm. Okay, so here's the paragraph. I don't think about my adoptive parents or my biological families much anymore. When I do, tension and heat don't accompany the thoughts. I don't need my past to be different. I don't need my family members to be different. What happened is I've become far more interested in something else. How can I serve the most people in my life now that I'm finally invested in being here? This is my new primary question.
Yeah.
So, and I read that and I thought, wow, isn't that exceedingly powerful? And I'm not like, oh, so everybody should be estranged, or it's not about that, right? Mm-hmm. It's about what is your purpose. And yeah. Can you talk about that?
Yeah. I thought that my biological family was going to be the golden ticket. Like, I thought I got a bum deal and I was going to suffer until I was about 18 years old. And then I was going to go on the hunt and find them all. And it was going to be a beautiful reunion. And they were going to be like, to meet them again and connect with them was going to be like going back through the birth canal and being born as a real person. And I needed them to do that. And that they were everything to me in my mind. So when that didn't go well over a period of 10 to 15 years on both sides, I was disillusioned and I was full of despair. So again, what am I going to do? Am I going to say, well, then I've lost my access point, forget it, or am I going to find another access point? And so part of the hard work has been, how do I find another access point? And when things really failed, I think I said this to you before, when things really failed with the last connection I had was with my father's family. And when things failed there, I started doing push-ups every day to counteract the weakness I felt inside. I felt so weak from the failure. I felt weakened in my whole system. And part of me just wanted to lay down and give up. So I started doing push-ups to counteract it and to just fight. So staying in the ring, staying with the push-ups and fighting for myself, which is what dignity does, that's where the heat and the tension calm down. And it's kind of like with the horse, like it does feel better to me now to give than to take. And when I'm in a bad mood, one of the first questions I try to get back to is, what's something nice I could do for somebody? Because I know that's not how I grew up. I grew up thinking about number one, and self-preservation was everything to me. Self-protection, self-preservation, and the world was dangerous. So for me to think that way, it's almost like I'm this angry adoptee that's become, God, I don't want to say the G word, but that's become connected. And,
I'm like, wait, what G word? I know what me. I know it. I know it. Okay.
I've become there's another G word, which is generosity. I'm interested in generosity because it feels good and it feels better than grievances. We've got two new G words. One is grievance and one is generosity. And so I'm interested in, and plus I know, like Viktor Frankl, who I've talked about before, it was he did it and his story helped me. And so I think I'm out of the woods. I know I'm out of the woods, and I hope my story can help other people.
I love that you said that.
I'm not trying to compare myself to him, by the way. He's a hero to me. I'm just saying we all need each other's stories.
Yeah. I haven't shared too much, but I went through extremely challenging year last year. And I don't talk about it publicly, and I don't know if that'll happen or not yet, but on my worst days, I would go out of my way to write a note to someone, just telling them how much they meant to me and how important their work is. And yeah, there's nothing like that, right? Because it's not out of a selfish place. I genuinely want to give them this gift of my words and encouragement. But man, I probably feel the best out of anybody. I just feel so good after it's hit send, and hopefully they'll feel good receiving it. But that was something that I had to do because I'm like, I just feel like nothing. And that was the best thing I could do for myself in those really horrible moments. And the responses I got from people were always just like, oh my goodness, it's so nice. Very kind things. And people were often surprised that I written to them. But I mean, truly, I felt so good after, and I don't know, I see a little piece of that in what you're saying, those acts of generosity.
And I think that when you did that, it's a part of you that is still intact, that isn't damaged or obliterated by the other stuff going on. It's a part of you that's still whole. And so to work at those parts of us that they're whole is powerful.
All right. Thank you.
Yeah.
Pam, your book is just so beautiful. There is so much we can learn from it. And I especially love the structure. Can you just tell us a little bit about what you have at the end of each chapter?
Yeah. So the book has my 10 favorite foundations for living a meaningful life, which is also a way of saying my 10 favorite ways I learned how to save myself from death. And I think it's a hopeful book, even though it's an honest book. And at the end of the chapters, I have 4 questions for each chapter to just think about the material and try to integrate it and apply it to your own life. And then I have 2 immediate actions to increase your life force, right now, because I like the idea of, I'm a practical person, and I like the idea of, well, what can I do right now to get this, or to try it on, or to see how this might work for me? So I tried to come up with 2 of those for each chapter.
which they're so good. There's so many good things in there, you guys. You have to grab this book. And let's end on that practical note. Can you tell us the meta mantra again? Because I think that would be a nice call to action for people to maybe practice that today. Maybe for your dog for a start, or that's the most neutral, or you're a pet of some sort that you have neutral or good feelings towards.
Right. Yeah. So you just sit somewhere comfortably. You don't have to sit on a meditation cushion. You can just sit on a couch or anywhere you're comfortable. You can even do this in bed before you go to sleep or when you wake up in the morning, and you just quietly say to yourself, you think of a person or an animal, like Haley said, and you just say, may you be happy. May you be safe and protected. May you be strong and healthy in your body. May you have ease. And you don't have to fake it or pretend you feel it more than you do. You just try saying those words and try on that intention, and then you just see what comes up. And if you do it with something that's easier, like my daughter Sarah's dog Joey, he's so easy for me. I want all of those things for him forever. And so it was really easy. And we did that. We did the easy thing for 2 whole days before we even got to somebody mildly complicated. So and it feels good. And you can even do it for yourself. I do it for myself sometimes. You could put your hand on your heart and you can close your eyes and just say to yourself, may I be happy? May I be safe and protected from danger? May I be healthy and safe in my body? May I have ease? Something like that. And you wish that for yourself. And then that helps. Now we're coming full circle. That helps reconnect with our lost dignity.
Thank you so, so much. I want you to share where people can connect with you online.
You can find me online. I'm on Facebook. My website is yourmeaningful.life or pamcordano.com. Same thing, same website. Or my email is pcordano@comcast.net.
And where can people find your book, 10 Foundations for a Meaningful Life, no matter what's happened?
You can find my book on Amazon or through Balboa Press.
Wonderful. Thank you so much. And I hope you'll remember us all after you're rich and famous. And it was so fun to see my name in your book. That was like, oh my gosh.
Yeah, so you're in chapter 10, right?
Yes.
And we didn't even talk about that in this, but yeah. How was that for you?
Well, I don't know if Anne told you. So Anne Heffron and Pam do healing retreats together. They're very good friends, and she writes about their friendship in the book. And I had Anne on an episode for my Patreon podcast. So if you're a monthly supporter of the show, I have a weekly podcast called Adoptees Off Script. So Anne was a guest. She's a frequent guest on there. And I had ordered your book and it came. And while I was recording with Anne, because you guys are like besties, I grabbed my package and I was like, Anne, I wonder if you can guess what's in this. So we opened it together while we were recording, which was so fun. And I like flipped through and then I was talking to her. I'm like, oh, you're in the acknowledgements and everything. And so that was really special. And then once we had hung up, I mean, officially, like the Patreon recording was all done and we were still kind of chit-chatting. I was just kind of flipping through and I was like, oh my gosh, I'm in here, which is so fun.
Of course you're in here. Yeah. I mean,
so
the community, I mean, the last chapter is on spectacular community and really defining what that is and why I think that's important. And without the work you do and what you give us, it just, I wouldn't know chapter 10. it would be 9 foundations for a meaningful life. Seriously. Like you were the link to put all of this together. And also for the adoptee retreat people who are still in touch and rely on each other and travel together. And it's just amazing what's come out of all of this.
Thank you. I feel like Pam has this magical combo of wisdom and experience experience, and especially because of all the clients she's served over the years who've had a myriad of life experiences, right? She's worked with people who are dying, who've been diagnosed with very challenging illnesses, and adoptees, and her experience with grief and meaning, and it's just so valuable. So I'm so grateful she shared with us. And I hope that you take something really great away from this conversation. Maybe your next action step, maybe you pick up Pam's book and you find more insights in it. I think there's something really, really valuable for you to take away from today's conversation. And I hope that you come back and let us know what that is. Maybe you send Pam a note on social media. Maybe you comment on the Adoptees On Instagram post of this episode and just share sort of what you've learned, what your takeaways are. I'd love to see what you're learning from Pam, and maybe something you'll share will trigger something else for someone who's like, oh yeah, I needed to remember that too. So another thank you I need to make is to my monthly supporters. Thank you so much. Without you guys, there would just not be a podcast. It just would disappear. And so if you think Adoptees On is important, if you want to keep hearing from other adoptee therapists on a healing series, if you want to hear from adoptees sharing their stories, if you want to reach other adoptees around the world to know they're not alone in, feeling this way about adoption and the impact it's had on their life, consider going to adopteeson.com/partner and joining us. There's so many fun bonuses. I have a whole other podcast every week that we talk about some really interesting things that we might not talk about on the main feed here. And I have a Facebook group for adoptees only. And there's just so many wonderful things that are happening in the community. And I'm so grateful to be a part of it. And I wouldn't be able to do this without your support. So thank you. I'm so grateful for you if you're supporting the show in that way. And if that's just like not on your radar, what about sharing this episode with another adoptee? Maybe there's an adoptee that you know that could use a little encouragement, a little bit of wisdom, and this would be a great episode to introduce them to the show and to Pam. And yeah, I would encourage you to do that. And sometimes people just would love to listen to a podcast, but they don't know how. So just grab their phone, subscribe to the podcast for them, show them how to play it in their app, and download it so they can have it with them on their walk with their dog or driving in the car. That's the best way to introduce someone to a podcast. So thank you for doing that. I appreciate that. It also means a lot to me when you share the show. Okay, thanks so much for listening. Let's talk again next Friday.